Hello, lovely people. I'm back from Brick Fair and I'm so hungry to dive into some more videos for all of you. So, let's dive into an episode of the Bionicle Inspiration series where we're going to be talking about Hero Factory MOCs. Very exciting. We're going to discuss a few and hopefully give you some inspiration for all of your future or maybe your current Hero Factory creations. So, let's get started. The very first MOC we've got today is by Student Scissors, and this is Lucas Valor. I really adore the color scheme on this build. There's something about it that reminds me of some of the older combiner sets that you could create with, combining a couple different official Lego sets, and they'd have instructions and stuff. And yeah, I like this color scheme. There's something kind of wacky about these colors, and I really enjoy that. It's really vibrant. It's this odd mashup of lime, red, and white, and it's just got this nice charm to it. And it certainly seems to be taking some inspiration from the old and actually really awesome theme, Atlantis. Of course, that sort of red and lime color scheme, very, very much more on the red side than the lime side, but Atlantis very much had that color scheme. And also you can see on the very back here that it uses some of those old turbine pieces from the specific Atlantis set that I was just showing you there. So yeah, actually I think that's a really great addition to put that on the back there. It's a nice way of both highlighting the head design, but also just making the back design a bit more interesting and a little bit more bulky. This is a bit of a slightly bulkier hero for being a little bit more kind of stout and your typical kind of size for like a Toa or a hero kind of thing. So yeah, I like that choice of really buffing out the back and putting that turbine there, especially because if we read the backstory on Flickr, it says that elite hero Lucas Valor explores the ruins of an ancient civilization deep under the sea of a distant planet. So it's pretty cool, and it seems pretty fitting as well. It's also great to see that Furno mask being used here. I think it's a bit of a rarer sight to see this mask used on MOCs, plus seeing it without the visor piece that was on the original set, like you can see here. I think that's nice because it makes it feel a little bit more unique, and it feels a little bit less like they're just putting Furno's head onto the body that they've built. You know, the fact this is a less seen mask and it doesn't have the visor, it makes it more its own, which is really cool. So yeah, overall a really fun build that I think explores some new grounds in some really fun ways. NY Guy has built a small team of heroes called Marina's Team. I really love me a good solid Hero Factory team, even if it's just sort of 3 characters instead of a more, sort of larger party there. But yeah, let's break down each of these 3 heroes. I almost called them villains, I don't know why. But let's break down these 3 heroes here because they look fantastic. We'll start off with Lewis Nerve, who is described as straightforward, strong, and unflinchingly loyal. I love seeing this cool weapon here using these rad Nexonite weapon parts. Now these came on a set much like this one. You can see them at the very end of these lances at the front of the vehicle here. Nexonites often actually had some interesting weapon pieces like that, or just interesting parts that had those kind of like hexagon patterns on them and stuff. There were some cool pieces out of Nexonites, whether you love the theme or you hate the theme. But it's great to see it in action here on this claw weapon. That could have easily been your typical claw pieces, but choosing that Nexonite piece makes it a little bit more distinct, a little bit more crazy cool. I also enjoyed this white and yellow color scheme, especially combining it with that nice scope eye there. Really enjoy this guy. Let's move over now to Adrian Chemister, and the description for him says, while he always follows orders and does his job to the best of his ability, his tendency to go overboard with his chemical solutions and reactions has been deemed troubling by his peers. Right off the bat, I like the color scheme, lime and green together. It works well, and it seems appropriate for the his love of chemistry and all that stuff. His weapon fingers are pretty awesome. It's a really nice addition. It's nice to know that these finger pieces, because they have those connections where you can put bars into them and stuff, you can put all sorts of crazy stuff on them, like effect pieces, fire pieces, weapons, just kind of whatever you want. So if you were to do something similar to this, there's a lot of customization options here, which is always what you want when you're building a MOC. So yeah, great to see these weapons in action here. They seem very appropriate and very fitting for this character that is maybe a little bit unhinged and maybe even could turn into a villain one day. I don't know. It seems like a cool backstory thing. Whether or not that's actually being implied in the backstory, I kind of just made that up. But still, if you like your storytelling in your Bionicle or your Hero Factory MOCs, nothing cooler than a hero who turns into a villain or a villain who turns into a hero. That's always a fun thing in storytelling. Now let's finish off with Cleo Marina, who is the leader of the team here. This is an absolute pleasure to see this awesome yellow sword piece as the weapon here. Now this comes from Sky Guardian, which is an Exoforce set. Of course, Exoforce may very well be one of the best LEGO themes ever, maybe after Bionicle. But yeah, anytime you can use an Exoforce weapon piece like this, or just any piece from Exoforce, it's always going to look cool. Especially this weapon piece specifically. I always thought this was such a nice piece. and it translates very, very well to Bionicle, so looks so good here. And when you combine that with those nice underwater exploration vibes that this character has, you've got a winning mock, that's for sure. Yeah, I think this team in general just looks super, super cool. Be nice to see it expanded with even more members, because so far these 3 characters look awesome. Mad Doc Meltdown is next, and this is by the All-Seeing Eye. This is a great take on Meltdown. Of course, the original set for Meltdown was great, and he looked like this, he looked awesome. But I think this idea of adding a nice lab coat and giving him this interesting infected arm is a really great way of making this character so much more unique and so much more of like a standout character. I mean, you look at this build and you know just from looking at it that it's a creepy, scary scientist. And it's a little bit harder to get, the idea of the personality behind Meltdown when you just specifically look at the set. He could be a crazed maniac, or he could be a really serious villain, that sort of thing. It's a little bit harder to tell. Not that that's inherently a bad thing, but the simple idea of adding a lab coat like this, it says a lot about the character and their personality. So yeah, little tiny details like that, or a specific item choice, or a clothing choice, or a weapon choice, whatever, it can say and do a lot. So if you're really trying to communicate a specific thing, have a think about what sort of items of clothing they might be wearing, accessories they might have, because it can do and say a lot. Great choice to have the lime whip piece coming out of the top of the lower arm, and the fact that he actually has a hand underneath that. I've always thought that's a lot cooler. The set just had a whip coming out of the hand. I guess it had those little claws on the side, I suppose, but still, I think it's a lot more practical in that sense, because he's got a free arm to be able to do stuff, and the weapon comes out on top. And man, just like any kind of weapon that comes out of a wrist, it always looks cool. So good choice. And now, as cool as the lab coat is from the front, I think it looks phenomenal from behind. The way that Hero Factory 2.0 kind of shield piece interacts with those white panels on the side, man, that looks so clean. The shaping of that is just phenomenal. So a very well crafted lab coat here. It's really nice to see a solid take on this character. Great, great work. And now Peter Shaker has built Dennis Price. This guy's got some really cool shoulder weapons. It's great to see how much they would be able to pose and move, and in general, I think they just look really cool. I also like this little datapad thing on the arm, using the datapad piece that came on the Invasion from Below wave of Hero Factory sets that was on the little minifigure versions of the Hero Factory heroes, but seeing it in action here is such a nice detail. The red minifigure hand that's also on the arm here, that's cool. It looks like some little arrow or some sort of detail that you might find on the arm. I don't know. It's a little tiny thing, but I really like that. It just looks nice. Also, taking a look at the back of the upper legs here, using this flag piece here to cover up some of the uglier parts underneath there. Super smart move, because it armors it up, it looks good, and it just works well. Plus, since the flag can move, because it's just kind of clipped on like that, this doesn't affect posability. We can see in some of the poses here, the way that the flag is just sort of slightly bending and everything. So yeah, using flag pieces like that is smart, because it armors it up, but it also allows for a good range of movement. So if you're someone that's a bit of a stickler for posability, flag pieces are a really good way to go there. This is super smart. It's also really nice to see that Hero Factory 2.0 torso piece and the 2.0 head as well being implemented onto a bit of a larger scale mock here. The limbs here specifically are a bit longer than the original sets were, but hey, it works. So it's nice to know that if you want to scale them up a little bit, it's pretty easy to do, and looks really cool too. So love your work, Peter Shaker. On to the next mock now, and it's the final mock for this episode. This is by Ron Volkers, and this is Professor Dr. Octolegs. So the description for this mock doesn't really say whether or not it's actually a Hero Factory mock, but it doesn't really say it's a Bionicle mock either. It's just a mock. But this was built for the BioCup, and the theme for that round of the BioCup was villains. So, could be from Villain Factory and, still be a Hero Factory character by proxy. So I think it counts. But I love this guy. First of all, I love how wonderfully wacky and comic book-like he is, because, of course, this seems to be taking some inspiration from Dr. Octavius. I think most Hero Factory villains really do lean into that kind of comic book vibe. I mean, you've got a character like Rotor, for example, who's a dude with a weaponized helicopter rotor on the top of their head, or kind of on their back, I suppose. So I don't know. I think that's pretty close to Dr. Otto Octavius, Doc Ock, whatever you want to call him. He's got those, weaponized mechanical arms. We saw a weaponized mechanical rotor before. It's pretty similar, right? So I don't know, if you're looking for inspiration for villains in Hero Factory, just look to Marvel or DC Comics or any of the other independent comic books out there as well, because they certainly seem to fit very well within that universe. Now, the actual tentacles themselves, I think they're really fun. They use some tubing from an old Life on Mars set. And these also come in a sort of more interesting it's not really trans, I don't know, these tubes have that weird sort of translucent look to them, but I wouldn't describe it as like a translucent color. But they come in this sort of almost trans black color, and they also come in a almost sort of trans orange color from Mars mission sets. But yeah, it's a really cool piece here, and I think it works perfectly for mechanical arms like this. It seems to be almost taking a bit of inspiration from Liv from Spider-Verse. Just the look of the tentacles seems very similar here. Now, I imagine the way this has been designed is that it's using some of the Hero Factory bone pieces, just running them through the tube. So that way it allows for a little bit of posability, and they can actually sort of support the weight of the mark. Plus, it also looks like when we take a bit of a closer look here, there's some green tubing running through there. Probably some of that thinner tubing that's on the kind of like neck area going into the back there. I like that choice. Just a little slight bit of color that just sort of seeps through because it is that kind of translucent color like I was talking about. That's a good choice. I like that. The head design is actually quite hilarious and well built as well. I love the goggles on him here, using some of these trans-red magnifying glass pieces. Now, these came on the Ice Wave of Alpha Team sets. You can just see it on the sort of middle part there of this vehicle. These work so well as villain goggles, especially the fact that they're red, because obviously those magnifying glasses also come in trans clear. But yeah, that choice there I think was very wise. It's very, very cool on this head design. And also the choice to use that Vizon headpiece, but for the teeth, use a white tire. Yeah, that was really smart. It looks like teeth, it works really well, and it's a really nice alternative instead of using the typical Paraka skull piece. So, very clever little part use there. It works exceptionally well. I also love the posing on this dude. It's just perfect. The hands lifted up like that. He looks like he's in peak villain pose. He's probably laughing or about to blurt out an evil monologue. That's just a really great choice. And the posing and the photography is always so important when you're displaying your mock to post it online, because if they're just sort of standing there, it can make the mock look a lot less cool. But if they're in a pose that's very appropriate for the character, it makes them look 1,000 times better. And this was the perfect pose for the character. Really, really great work. Such a fun-filled, villainous mock. Perfect for Hero Factory. And that concludes our episode all about Hero Factory MOCs. Hopefully you got a little bit inspired, and if not, just had a bit of fun looking at some cool, well-built character builds. If you'd like to see your own MOCs on the show, you can submit them through the submission email that's currently on your screen. The email is also in the description below if you want to copy and paste it. Additionally, in the description below are links to all the MOCs that you saw in today's episode, so be sure to check out those links and maybe leave a like and a comment on the original posts that these builders put out on the internet, because they deserve a bit of love and you can give them that love. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Happy building, and bye for now.